Okay, so hello. So today we're joined by Matthew Tweedie from Adelaide. My name's Mark McDermott and my company's NLP Training Limited. And I'm in a podcast situation to find out how people are when they take a deep dive into the human condition, human consciousness and awareness and all things to do with that. That's what my main interest is. Matthew can introduce himself in a second, but basically he's an NLP trainer and he's a clinical psychotherapist, hypno-psychotherapist. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Hypno-psychotherapist.
hypno-psychotherapist.
Yeah, and so many things besides. I won't spoil off for you. I'd like you to tell people a little bit about yourself because it's very varied. And one of the things about you that really interests me, I'll say from the beginning, is there's not many people that I meet in a casual situation like when we met, and I end up talking for hours and hours, including out on the street outside. And probably could have carried on till the sun came up. It's not that often that happens with me, but when it does happen, I know that that's someone that I want to know more, and that's been my pleasure to start getting to know you, and I know that's going to happen for a long time. I do also think that you've done something similar to me in a way that I used to work in the film industry, but I knew ultimately that that wasn't for me. Even though I was doing really remarkably well, I had to just kind of walk away from it and recreate. And that's one of the wonderful things about the work that we do is if someone's in that situation, we know that we can do that because we've done it and we're not that special. So anyone can do that. And I think you've been through a similar process, haven't you? So why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and how on earth did you move from construction management into the world of NLP and hypnosis?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for the lovely introduction and right back at you. It's been a pleasure getting to know you. It's yeah, really cool. So I guess my foray, I mean, really, if I think about if I just cast my mind back to how and why the big why transitioning to the world of consciousness, of change, of human development and evolution, really is the beginning of my own inner turmoil, right? And that I guess you'd call it one of the crises in Hawaiian Huna, the crises of the emotional body from physical to emotional body, and the awakening of the emotional body, which is puberty. And I think just prior to that, in my school days, especially moving from primary, we call it in Australia, but primary to middle/high school. So about that 12, 13 years old, all of the stuff that was going on. So at that age, we're talking deep depression. The word, I love the term put on medication, but I guess even at that age, I have to accept that I technically, willingly was a participant in that. And I think that that's a big one for me, is like to know that, hey, even at a young age, no one puts you on anything. You've got free will at that age. That's another story. But there I was with IBS, deep depression, suicidal thoughts, like a lot of unrest. That went right through to my late 20s. And through that period, that was really uncomfortable. Really felt that I really had to do something technical, or my parents being first generation migrants from South Africa, there was a level of pressure there that I better go to uni, and the only thing I really was around or felt comfortable with was the family business. So my dad was a construction manager, builder, he was a carpenter before that, and so I followed the footsteps and jumped into the family business and actually went to uni. My undergraduate was in the Bachelor of Construction Management and Economics, and that was my move into construction. A good 3 or 4 years in that field. Interestingly enough, I was okay. I was reasonable at the job. I mean, I was definitely competent and capable. A little bit young, I think, to be managing a lot of tradespeople that were often 10 years my senior at that time, and that posed its own challenges, But through that period of really getting to the point of not ever resolving the anxiety and depression, I met a gent that had done NLP, and I just knew he was speaking in a certain way, and he seemed to kind of he had caught on to something that I felt that I wanted a slice of that, whatever I'll have what he's having, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I said, what do you know? Like, what is it? What's going on? You know, what is it? There's something, you know, I don't know. And he, you know, in not so many words said, oh, well, NLP. And at that time, you know, it wasn't a long period after that. Within a month, I flew to Vegas and started training NLP
Wow.
and hypnosis, and then kind of that set the trajectory. Yeah.
Well, that's an incredible, you know, you went all in straight away. So you must have known that it was something that you were interested in. And I mean, you said that you were always a bit interested in how the mind works on a level anyway. Is that
always
partly
was.
because of what you were actually moving through, and so therefore you became invested in that?
Yeah, good question. I mean, I believe, funnily enough, my mum was always pretty open and cool with that side of things. Like, she was a
Right?
bit, she was into hypnosis. Like, she had affirmation tapes, and she used to listen to those. Like, they were weight loss. She used to do weight loss tapes,
Wow.
interestingly enough. But that's I guess it is always the most what do I call the thing that's most in your awareness that'll drive you towards change, right? Or the thing that maybe is the sore spot on the psyche. So she used to use those, and I always knew she was open to that, and I always thought hypnosis was cool. I also had this feeling from young that I wanted to, I don't know, in a broad sense, help people, like in some capacity. And even before I went over, I was actually going to go. I wasn't sure, and I was a bit lost. And there was a period, a couple of years before going to study NLP, I actually even enrolled into another degree so I could jump into physiotherapy, because I had this thing of wanting to help people. I didn't know in what capacity.
Yeah.
So I was seeking, and yeah, I definitely believe it is a bit of that archetype of the wounded healer, right? Where, you know, I've got some unrest. I want to help myself. I want to help others, and that cyclical kind of, which as you know, when you clean up those projections, like if you help someone make profound change and they transform, there's a project that internally, you know, from a Jungian perspective, you transform all the while because they're you,
Yeah, absolutely.
and vice versa on some level. So yeah.
It's funny how that works out as well, isn't it? It's a tricky thing when I explain that to other people, that's that's kind of what's happening. You know, I help them, but actually it's kind of resolving my own issues, but the money flows towards me from them. It's kind of strange. I get
It's a
paid to
win-win.
actually clean up my life.
Right. Yeah.
So and then was it after that you then went and did your master's in clinical hypno-psychotherapy? Did that come after the NLP training?
Yeah, you know, I have a really funny interlude there, which is, I guess, an interesting one to share. So basically, in that period, a lot of things were changing. I went to Vegas for me. It was simply to sort my own stuff out, because I knew something had to change, and a change of medication wasn't it.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that had run its course. And so what had happened is, when I was training with Tad and Adriana in Vegas, and it was kind of posed to me that I never knew, I went there for me, and I never knew that as a result, like I knew, yeah, to be honest, I went in there quite naive and not seeing the whole picture, where I was doing it for me. I didn't know, hey, I'm a practitioner and I could help people, because I was just
Yeah.
focused on me, like cleaning my own stuff up. But after that, it was like, at least the possibility was open, but it was a very open loop without me truly seeing myself to be working in the capacity that I am now. So what had happened is I came back. There was a few, still a few, let's say, unfinished values levels, maybe from a Claire Graves perspective. you know, things that I needed to get done. And so I'd had a friend that because I got a little bit of a background in hip hop as a lyricist, so like a lot of freestyle and free form kind of linguistic work, which is my foray into linguistics in a lot of ways, and rhythm and cadence and flow, and so that, I think, was a great background for hypnosis. That was my love of hypnosis. Without, you know, I was in trance, always listening to hip hop, and they're some of the greatest hypnotists, right? These artists. So we were making music, and I'd had saved a bit of money, and there was an opportunity to kind of buy this nightclub that he was a DJ at. So I bought the nightclub in one of the main fairs, Hindley Street here in Adelaide. So that was literally, I got back from the training, and then that year, 2011, was a crazy year where not only did I go to do Prac, Master Prac, Trainer's Trainer, and APET, and my foray into Hawaiian Huna, but I also bought the club with a partnership, this cocktail lounge. So that, and for me, it was kind of in conflict, because I did want to do this NLP hypnosis change work thing, and yet there was something in my system I needed to get out. So I did that, and then that was a good 2 years till things didn't go quite the way I wanted. Went into some other sales realms, and selling houses, which was a combination of the construction, where eventually I got to a point where I was like, you know, I keep telling myself I just need a bit more time to be ready. And then it just got to the point where I was like, I am ready, I got to take the dive. So I quit my job and started my business kind of, and at that stage is when I started studying hypnopsychotherapy. I thought, you know, to bring maybe another side of academia and just see from a different school, because I've been down the funnel, or certainly moving down the pathway of one school. Let me broaden my horizon, you know.
Yeah.
And so that's when I made contact with one of my mentors, which the school is actually in Europe. It's a hypnopsychotherapy school that's based in Ireland, and but yeah, went down that path and started to go, just broadening the psychotherapeutic toolkit.
Yeah, absolutely. I you know, I personally, I see what we do as, you know, people often say it's an art and a science, and I hesitate only to say that because some people get lost in the art of it all and then start to sound very silly. But at the end of the day, there is an artistic endeavor as part of it, and as an artist, you know, you've mentioned hip hop, and we talked before coming live about being musicians, and I'm a musician myself. That part of my expansion as an artist is to engage with other arts and other culture, other takes on it, whether it's music or hypnosis. That it's, you know, by encountering other people and other situations and other takes on the experience that I'm interested in, that helps me to grow as a person and as an artist. You know, same with martial art. You know, by wherever I go in the world, I always look up where's the Aikido place, how can I go there and have it, because even though we might not speak the same language, we can still practice, and it's a physical conversation with an exchange of ideas and a natural conclusion. It's very similar to debate in many respects. It's just a physical debate, nothing to do with destruction or anything like that. It's much more cooperative.
Expression though, right?
Yeah, it's expression. It's a physical expression, like dancing or something like that is a physical expression. So I can totally get. So okay, so you go and do all these things and you learn all these things, and you know, you clearly did clear up your life, whether it took a little bit of time after you training or whatever. The fact is, it happened. And I did like the way that you said, you know, basically you said that your medication had run its course. And I think that's just like a beautiful sentence, because people talk about courses of medicine, it's like it run its course. I really like that. I just thought I'd throw that one back.
Thank you. Yeah, nice.
But what was it different? Okay, so there you are. You're still you, but you can do all these sorts of things, and some things are kind of, you know, bread and butter things. You help people with the weight, smoking, things like that. But where else has it gone? Where's the interesting stuff? What sort of stuff have you discovered out there? And what's what's been your things that you're really particularly happy about achieving with people?
Okay. Honestly, yeah, you have the typical picture that I think most people hold in their mind of what hypnotherapy or hypnosis is, and what people call, you know, a hypnotherapist. For definitely my passion has been, yeah, helping, I think, specifically with things like depression and like when you like deep clinical depression, where someone has just not been able to shake it for 10, 20 years, and panic attacks. I love seeing, within kind of 6 or 7 hours, maybe even less, depending on where they're at. But that's the kind of the longer time interval would be around that stage, and having them completely shed that. I like that. I like pain too. I think pain is incredible because it's such a tangible, for people, and to see, pain literally turn down or just turn off,
Or off
where
even, yeah.
applicable, and safe, if it's safe for that to happen. I've seen people with chronic pain, 8 and 9 and 10 out of 10. I've worked with phantom limb, which,
Oh, you too.
and those burning sensations, and have that turn off, and yeah, I mean, I absolutely love that. But where that is, and I guess that is, I'm super passionate about that, and that is where I spend a lot of my time. I think also where I'm not seeing as many clients. I do see some, but I'm definitely shifting gears to see more and more, is actually helping people, make huge transitions with business. Like, so, like I've got a client in mind who had a lot of trauma, and he came to me with in a lot of debt. When he called me, he actually had to wait a minute to even get the deposit down, and but he was trying to start this sales business, and it was a door-to-door kind of thing, actually selling something without going into detail, selling something you install into someone's house to improve their the way they live, and so on. And he had a sales background, but he was just really stuck, and we did the I think it was a 5 or 6 hour breakthrough, and he came back a year later turning over $1 million. It was more than $1 million. And then he just came back because he wanted a little tune up, because it was more like, okay, now I'm cranking and I just feel I'm a bit disorganized. Can you help? And it was just a quick it was a tune up. So but that side, I think that's so exciting, because people do really think, I call it they come for an ouchie, right? Like, but the pain point. But I think the really cool thing about this work that's underestimated, underrated, and just unknown is that that personal I get performance enhancement. That's the word I'm looking for, and just taking someone from 2 cylinders to 12 cylinders, like, or the cylinders are there, but getting the combustion to that part of the engine, right? Yeah. So it's all there. It's all there.
I love that. I love the analogy as well. I have a love of getting people through that first thrust of what they may have come for in the first place, but the ones that then move into more of a coaching relationship afterwards.
Sure.
To help that to continue. I love that, because to me, I call it mind topiary. So it's like, and they put those bushes into a shape, and it takes a while to kind of, and then you have to kind of snip a little bit every now and again for it to. So they sometimes just almost present themselves to me, knowing that during the time that we are together, they trust me to spot the little things that are going to make the difference to them, because they're so used to that as being, part of their overall success strategy, that they move from there to there quickly, but now they're learning how to maintain that, and what things need to change next, and knowing that you as a person can spot that for them and help them
Sure.
forwards. I mean, you'll never run out of ideas with people, will you? Let's face it.
No, provided they're willing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. I do love the fact that you worked with phantom limbs as well. I've just got to say, I did that 3 months after my original prac training. I helped someone with phantom limbs, and it worked, and it switched off the pain, and they were so grateful. But I was so totally surprised that I didn't know if I could or not. You know what I mean? I just
right
did the things that I was meant to do, and wanted it so much for them, and they wanted it, and then it worked, and I ended up thinking, God, what can I do? I literally at that point, it was all open to me. It was like, I don't know where the limit is, but I haven't found it, and that made me very curious.
Yeah, indeed. In fact, one of the techniques that I won't mention it here just for the sake of it, but in one of those master prac techniques for pain, which is taught for back, and then I just figured, well, clearly it's bigger than that. And some of the things that it can apply to, and I've actually got a buddy that's also a master practitioner. You might even want to talk to him sometime. I could connect you guys. And he kind of started developing it he said there's nothing he hasn't been able to apply it to. Nothing, from headache to toothache to, like, you name it, and it's just like, wow, talk about not knowing the limits, and exploring with these phenomenal tools that really they certainly haven't been defined as far as being where is the limit yet, right?
No, we don't. And as you said before, there are certain times when pain's maybe not safe to remove, or or we could talk about all of that for ages. But that aside, it's been my great pleasure to help someone to get themselves to a place where the pain that hasn't existed yet doesn't have to exist.
Yeah.
And it can just be the next moment, that it's not there, as long as it's safe and okay and within the ecology and everything else for that to happen. But like I say, we could talk about that for hours, but if it is, then why not switch off the pain if they don't need to have it anymore? And it's great when chronic pain dissipates in someone who's maybe had that for 12 years or something, and it's had a big effect on their life, and then it's not there anymore. It's like, great, you're done.
yeah, exactly.
And what else is possible for you, because you did that? I didn't do it, you did it. I might have helped, but at the end of the day, they've done it themselves, haven't they? Like with any of the changes, I guess, in a way.
Sure.
Which brings me down to, well, where are they? And in the context of consciousness itself, you're aware at the level that you're aware of. You have the years of training inside you, and lots and lots of experience, some of which is with clients, but the majority of it is you being you. It's not like you switch it off when you're not working, is it? It's more like something that you are rather than something that you do. What's it like for you? How would you describe your own awareness of being, if that's not too general and broad a question to hit you with?
No, I'll do
I'm
my
very
best
curious.
to field that one. It's a great question. I mean, it's a really fluid evolution. I know that who I thought I was, think I am, and believe I will be are all simply concepts. They're exoskeletons that I am the architect of, and B, that I will choose to animate in various ways. So, just as you think of the spectrum of all emotion, how dynamic that is. I mean, the dizzying highs of euphoria and the painful lows of shame and depression, they're different emotions, but they're all from the same source. And I guess that's the same with you or I or one or us or it. You know, and the power of language to be able to be the, for lack of a better term, the clay from which we are able to mold this flexible and yeah, completely plastic thing that we call being is it's really cool, because I guess that's the awesome thing, or the beautiful thing, or the fortuitous factor that I feel graced with, or probably I sought out, and on some level I believe that's you know part of the evolution, why I'm here this time round, was to get introduced to language in such a way that I could start to manifest and create with volition, right? So language is certainly a big part of that.
Yeah, I like that thing that you just said then, that you can manifest with volition. I really like that. I could talk about my version of that forever. But I'm curious. Can you say a little bit more about that? Because yeah, we can talk in terms, and lots of people who do trainings do talk about manifesting your goals, your desires, and all this SMART
Sure.
goals. It kind of gets stacked out into some sort of easily digestible morsel or something like that. Whereas
Sure.
taking it fully to where it can go to, which you are doing, and actually participating in manifesting your reality and knowing that you're an active part in that. That ultimately, I don't know what it's like for you, but for me that seems to be deeply satisfying in of itself. I'm just curious, how do you, if we put it in context of, say, moving forwards a year from now, you obviously, and we know that there's no future and there is no past and there's only right now, but having said all of that,
Sure.
and future's a concept
Sure.
and everything else, but still we do plan on having another birthday or two, maybe a lot more.
Yeah.
And so when you think about the future and what you're going to be manifesting in the next year, where do you see yourself literally getting to? What's next for you in terms of your own awareness development in the next few years?
Yeah, great question. I think right now, more than ever, has been I've been introduced to these concepts, I guess some of these ancient concepts, and universal laws, whether it is hermetics or Huna. It's about, and I guess, yeah, especially where how that I guess Tad James introducing me to Huna and a lot of these concepts, and now I've really been taking a deep look at some of the most basic and fundamental concepts, which are the four bodies, physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual, and how they tie into the three selves, conscious mind, unconscious mind, and higher self. So there's this crossover with the both of those, and it's in where I'm at. What I've really found my direction of late, from what I'm putting all my energy and attention into, is and it came up from maybe all the successes in my clinic, in my office, and then where especially with health, like weight loss and those types of health things, but to an extent some anxiety and depression work. If the client didn't get exactly what they wanted, and it did feel like they were playing 100% and all secondary gain was flushed out as much as it could be, what's missing. And when I talk about the 4 bodies, it's kind of starting to study. If you see the model of the 4 bodies, it's 1, 2, 3, 4 stacked up. But the physical, we kind of, and I've got an article about it, and I'm kind of building more on my website about it. But the physical, it is drawn kind of like a block, whereas the others are kind of circular, and that's on purpose. And the fact that the physical body, it's kind of like that. Respecting the temple, that if the physical body isn't structurally stable and integral, like nothing can be built on that. So I often say to clients, you come in for coaching and we're working on typically mental and emotional, but I'll often task you to look down here at the physical. But my understanding and is maybe, so I'm my cup is still so empty there as understanding biology and physiology and biochemistry. So it's almost like right now putting together a school, or building from the school of Huna that I'm initiated into, like tying it all in, like a knowledge school that can go, that's there for me to synthesize and consolidate, more to the point, all of that information, and have a resource for my clients, and have a place where, if you want to understand, not just, if you want to evolve through all of these bodies, like if we start from spirit, come down to physical, and move back to spiritual, start to learn fundamentally, to as much as an extent as we can possibly in this level of consciousness, who and what we are, and where we are on that path, and how to take care of each body to make that a smooth transition through all levels of consciousness. So putting together a school and a knowledge base to assist people, whoever's ready to make that a smooth transition and facilitate all of that. That's probably the easiest way to sum it up. And I am focusing a lot on physical at the moment, because the emotional, I have spent a lot of, that's a lot. Emotional, mental, I've spent so much time, and even spiritual, but I think physical, it's kind of the missing piece, getting some of those aspects of diet and the endocrine system, not just the not just the nervous system, the endocrine system, like what's going on there, what's going on with the thyroid, what's going on with the adrenals, what's going on with the hypothalamus or pituitary, and these, I'm in a state of a lot of unconscious incompetence, which is quite uncomfortable, as at times, but just diving in and building, like putting what I know together with what I don't know in a digestible fashion for someone that really wants to supercharge their evolution.
Oh, beautifully said. And let's face it, it's clear, especially the way you just talked, that you're absolutely passionate about bringing this to people. A passion which I share, as we talked before we had this podcast. Sure. Today. I'm fully invested in the process, because as I said to you earlier, I actually feel like I've won the lottery. But it's not a lottery that if I win it, no one else can win, because it's not actually a lottery. Mm-hmm. It's actually everyone already is a winner, and they're mm-hmm. just a millimeter away from knowing that that's actually the truth for themselves. And sure. It's so easy. Some people transition so quickly, they're so close to it, mm-hmm. particularly children. When I work with children, they're just mm-hmm. The younger they are, the more Buddha-like they are, almost. Mm-hmm. They're very, very flexible. Their idea about reality is very flexible. I mean, very mm-hmm. flexible. I learn a lot about, I think I'm very flexible in my reality.
Until
sometimes when I work with children, I realized that, okay, so I showed one of them once how to do a power circle, an anchor basically, mm-hmm. and all the rest of that. But then a couple of weeks later, his mum got in touch with me and told me that he'd said to her to tell me that they're no longer called power circles, they're rainbow circles, and they're twice as powerful. Okay.
And who are you to disagree with that?
and he was 6, and he taught his 3-year-old sister how to have one as well. So she
wow.
this rainbow circle in which she couldn't be scared of anyone or any situation. I just thought that was fantastic, you know. But flexibility,
Sure.
and okay, so you're like any good teacher, in my opinion, you're stretching yourself, you're pushing it all out there, no matter what it is that you're learning. And obviously, it would be beautiful if someone could just have the whole thing in one go. I mean, I would be the first person to congratulate any of the people I taught if they came straight to where I am and ran at the level that I'm running. I'd be so happy for them, you know, or even better than me. If they just instantly went further than me, I'd be like, congratulations. And when are you going to teach a course that I can come on? But for people, at first, you have to show them the shape, don't you? And you have to give them the basics, and you have to look. Someone said to me recently, there are rules and there are tools, and I thought, yeah, I can kind of get on that. And you know, when we teach people NLP, for example, I find one of the hardest parts of the training for people is for them to get their head around the language section, and it's because it's very dry. But at the same time, I know that when they get it, they'll just be able to use it in so many ways. And I'm excited to get to that bit where they discover where they are in it and how clean up their own language that brings everyone else's language into sharp focus, you know. And that's, so to me, the investment in the language part of the training for a student is going to repay so many times over. And yet at the end of it, you're where you are at the forefront of your edge of it all, pushing it out there and forwards, because you know ultimately it's better not just for you, but hopefully for other people around as well. And I guess that brings me to the next thing that I was curious about with you, which is, okay, so you're doing all this stuff, so what? I mean, what's the bigger picture? You know, you could talk about where you're going in the next year or so, but you know, what about the bigger context of humankind, or even bigger than that? You know, where are we going with all of this? Is it just new tricks for the dog, or is it, because to me, I sense that there's maybe not a new consciousness, but certainly a very increasing level of awareness or consciousness emerging at the moment on the planet.
Yeah.
And I think that it's healthy, and it's not based on the old paradigm. It seems to be like we're creating something new that's much more inclusive and holistic for people. That's kind of my take on it. But I'm wondering, what do you think is the purpose in doing what you're doing in the bigger context, in your legacy even, you know?
Sure. I do agree with you. There's there's definitely there's always, I find the opportunities to what quote unquote level up. It's kind of like I often will feel myself knocking at the door of I feel that there might be a shift of evolution here, and it's almost like there's always a choice in it. And sometimes for whatever reason, perhaps I don't turn that opportunity. Yes, I don't slide through that door, and it doesn't mean that it doesn't mean it's gone forever, but you just don't know when it's going to be back again, right? So I think it's I think it's the same way. I think it's the same way for humans as a whole. You know, there are these kind of windows and doors that the crack will be open, and there are definitely people awakening. You know, there's the flip side of that though that I see. And so I think for me, it's like always making sure I clean my stuff up for the purpose of that whole picture. Because if I ever do get too bogged down in oh gee, you know, I see certain behaviors that are, you know, maybe through whatever particular messages or propagandas being spouted by certain sources, if I see people going down that path, not to be disheartened, and truthfully, because all I'm doing is tuning into a shadowy part of me. And it's kind of like, yeah, ultimately cleaning up. I believe that there is a definitely there's availability and openness for I guess the humanity's shadow to be cleaned up, and to kind of be moving into that lighter, brighter, higher frequency, for it to not to sound too hippy dippy. But does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. I mean, you know, for me, I have an image in my mind. It could be my own illusion, of course. But in my mind's eye, you know, I've seen a future that's possible, that's entirely
Mm-hmm.
possible, that's not airy fairy BS, but in which the world is maybe not utopian perfection or something like that. But then what is, you know? But it's much better than it is at the moment, and in very simple ways
Sure.
that just seem to be very. We could do it all now, in fact.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And we have all the resources and all the infrastructure to be able to achieve so much for everyone at the moment. And it just takes a certain amount of people, and it's not a very big number of people that would have to change their attitude in order for that to come about. So I see in 200 or 300 years, for example, into the future, that there's a much better world that I'm moving towards with everything I've got, knowing that I won't actually see that personally.
No.
But you know, I'm not just in it because it's all about me. Do you know what I mean? You said it's about service. You know, I've often thought that I've been moving in service and wishing to learn how to be in service since I was a child, really. And I still am now, and I still haven't lost that passion. And sure, I can only clean myself up at the end of the day, but for every person that kind of also starts to engage with that process for themselves and do that, the more of that that's happening, I can sense that we all start to head in a not the same direction, because I don't want the world to be like full of people like me. I mean, that's kind of scary. I'm probably quite boring as well in some ways, but you know,
Right.
but you know, you're who you are and I'm who I am, and we have a lot that we agree on, and we're completely different people who have completely different background, different culture, in fact. You know, we share a similar language, but other than that, we're very, very different people, and yet we connect. And when we connect, there seems to be somewhere from where we're connecting that seems to be, dare I say, the same or similar, or that might just be my hallucination, but it makes me feel good anyway to hallucinate like that. But it feels similar,
Okay.
and I've had that experience with so many people. You know, in music world, I've had that, and with martial arts, I've had that, and with hypnosis, I've had that, and with my clients, I have that. And there just seems to be, you know, a place from which, when people are coming from that place within themselves, there seems to be a lack of division, and
Sure.
I'm attracted to the lack of division. I think that there's a lot of positive outcomes that are possible when that happens. And so part of what I want to build as a legacy is to have that effect to the best of my ability within my sphere of experience, knowing that there's people like you literally on the other side of the planet engaging in a similar process. And I suppose one thing I'm curious about that I haven't asked yet is, I have two things in mind, but one thing is, when you're at your very best, when whatever you call that, you know, that peak moment that everyone has, and you know what it's like for you when it's at its best for you. What is, how would you actually describe what it's like at its best?
I call it probably the easiest way to construct the phrase would be ecstatic flow.
Ecstatic
Because
flow.
it's not just flow. It's not just flow for me. It's ecstatic. It's an extremely high level of energy and clarity, with that sense of purpose and power, not in a power over, but more empowered. That, you know, it's kind of like the ceiling's been ripped off, and, you know, there is no highest height there. And then therefore the ability to see all the beauty and the possibilities, because like I said before, it's like those other potentially other negative emotions or are those limitations that could force the filter of division, and it certainly is the inverse of that.
I like that. That's a very nice description. That I'm guessing it is a guess, but I'm guessing that you're more able with the passage of time to track for that and to notice it perhaps more and more over time. Is that been your experience?
Yeah, I believe. Yeah, no, I think that was a apt mind read, and yeah, I certainly. Yeah, like anything, back to my point earlier, nothing's static. So there's those layers where it does evolve, but I'm certainly able to track, identify, catch, notice, and then therefore reflect. It's kind of like the inverse. We touched on it a moment ago, but like when you were saying about working with a client with the capacity of perhaps a breakthrough where they're coming to sort out that major pain point, whether, you know, an anxiety or a pain, and helping them make that disappear permanently. And now, but then perhaps they'll come back, they will further engage with you because they now see what's possible. And then I'll often say to clients, you've come to me for this, but you're going to get far more than what you came for, just because we are doing some pretty deep work. We're getting to the root cause of something that's all pervasive, it's all inclusive, it's cross contextual. So but the nature of that is there's two sides. One is that it opens up the evolutionary lid of what's possible, and the other is interestingly enough, with like the universal model of change, as you're aware, clearing some stuff also facilitates something else that was waiting in queue to be worked on.
Yeah, to pop up. Yeah.
You know? So I guess back to inverse relationships, it's kind of like that, that continual spiral dynamic evolution, right?
I love it.
So yeah.
And Matt, it's obvious that you've got that, and you know, in spadefuls, and you know that the investment of your time and energy has led to, you know, a rich reward, as I might call it. It's certainly true for me. I think I said earlier on, I think it was during the recording, but it may have been before it, that in of itself, it's supremely satisfying. You know, even if it didn't do anything with it, I'm still glad that I'm aware of it, and that I can spend the rest of my life cultivating it inside myself. And I'm guess one of the things I intend to ask everybody, and I mean everybody, whenever I meet people, I'm always interested.
Okay.
If someone's good at what they do and that they're also a teacher, I'm also curious, what is it would you say to someone, okay, they're not going to maybe jump in at the level that you're at, but if someone's seen this or heard this podcast, I don't think there's any coincidence about that really at all. They're already on a path which has led to them experiencing this conversation. And maybe they're thinking, okay, that kind of, I get it. I can kind of see where it's going, you know, it's kind of, it's ringing all those bells for me, you know, and I kind of get a basic grip of what's going on, but is it for me? I mean, what would you say to someone who's not yet taken those first steps towards themselves, in effect, but maybe they're wondering, and they're sitting on the edge, and they're wondering, you know, is it too late? Is the boat left? We just the lucky ones, you know, and it's beyond, you know, could I possibly ever have any of this? You know, what would you say to encourage someone forwards?
Yeah, I probably would say something along the lines of, it kind of comes down to that thing, that itch, that off type of feeling that everyone, I believe, and this is a heck of a mind read, everyone, I believe, has experienced at some point that everything doesn't quite seem right, or there's something, it feels that there's something missing, or I'm not, if you've ever asked yourself the question, you know, or even thought, am I really living a full connected experience with the universe, or am I living my full potential? And I'm not to say that I am, but what I'm saying is that that you know, there's this capacity with this toolkit to navigate these terrains, that, you know, there's something more. I always knew there was something more. I always knew there was something off. I always knew that perhaps I'm just not, you know, I mean, if you're feeling sad for no reason, or fearful for no reason, or panicking, or think that you've got a chemical imbalance, like, do you think that that's real, or do you think that maybe you're in charge of balancing your own chemicals? Because no one can give you, there's no magic pill other than understanding what you truly are, and we truly will never be able to imagine exactly the infinite capacity of our consciousness. So if you've ever wondered, is there more, and ever wondered, why isn't that happy pill working, then you definitely can actually experience so much more, like deep passion, deep joy, deep the deepest forms of expression and the most passionate forms of creativity, your heart being completely open to the fact that, to the point where it's overflowing, and all you want to do is share your purpose. And if you're not kind of commonly experiencing that feeling, like, I want to share my purpose, that's something is off, whether you're aware of it or not. And I don't want to tell people their business, but I know in my heart of hearts that, yeah, if you're not experiencing that, then you're missing something you came here for, I believe.
That's beautiful. And you know, if someone is in that scenario, and what we're talking about,
and you can,
for example,
and
resonates, then for sure, obviously, there will be your details connected to the podcast, for example. I'm sure you're more than happy to take a call or an email from people who are curious, especially if they're in your part of the world. But then, you know, online means that geography is no longer a restriction. And to take the first steps towards what process it is that's going to engage them, because at the end of the day, I was very successful in the film world, but it was not my world. And at the end of the day, I could have carried on taking the money, but my life could have been empty. And that's no way. That was never going to be the way that I was going to be. And whereas now I took a chance. I made a course correction, and the course correction was exactly what I wanted it to be. It took effort, but at the end of the day, I learned skills which enabled me to feel free enough and with enough skill to be able to navigate towards what I wanted to get. And I'd encourage anyone to learn the skills for themselves, whatever you want to call it. We obviously teach from within NLP and hypnosis and timeline therapy and things like that. But there are other processes about, and there are plenty of other really good teachers on the planet. And the point is, we're all moving towards, you know, our own improvement. I think you used self-improvement earlier on, and it's a phrase that a lot of people bandy about, but the true power of self and improvement is a beauty in of itself, you know. And I encourage anyone to move towards things that make them feel more whole and more complete with purpose. You hit it really with that word, that purpose. You know, when the results you're getting in life are in alignment with your purpose in life, anything in between can be shifted and adjusted and changed, you know, when you learn how. as you said, out of volition,
Mm-hmm.
you're able to do things that you couldn't do before. And I totally agree that that's my experience of life. But it came because I went and learned how to do some things. So it's not random anymore.
No.
And we're human beings, you know, I fall over and everything else. I make mistakes. You know, yeah. But I'm more accurate in the way that I go about creating the life that I'm living than I used to be. And I'm much more satisfied with the life that I'm living than I used to be. And I know that that actually affects the people that I work with, because it encourages them towards that aspect of themselves that they can see when they contact me. You know, I'm not blowing my own trumpet too big. I just think that that's how it is. In fact, a lot of people, even back in the days when I was a Gestalt therapist, before I actually discovered NLP, used to say that it was who I was and not what I did that made the difference. And it used to really annoy me.
Wow.
Because I was like, no, it's all this complicated stuff you just don't understand. But actually, no, it was okay. So if who I am is what's making the difference, then the best thing I can do for myself and for my clients is to actually get on that and become who more I am, and stop pretending not to be
more of who you are, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Stop pretending not to be who I am, and be comfortable with it, and learn how to enjoy that process and the process of discovery and everything else about it. That's just my little two pence, you know. But at the end of the day, you're happy being where you are now, and it's so far different from, you know, the being that you had manifested with what skills you had at the time, but you learned new skills and manifested in a different way and continue. And we don't know even how we'll manifest in 10 years' time. But having the skills to navigate through that process, the process is the same. The content of our lives changes, but the process of how we go about manifesting our lives is the process. And that skill set is just as valuable now as 20 years ago.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And like you said, tools, like, because that is ultimately, you know, no matter what you label it, it is a system and a set of tools that and we spoke before the pod too about structure, but giving you that structure, but back to the quote of yours, you know, iron sharpening iron, right? Because then you get the tools, and then there's so much more because they evolve, and then you add your flavor and you add you, and they become you, and so we go.
And that's what it's all about, isn't it? I don't want people, like I said, being versions, poor copies of me. God, that'd be awful. I want them to be,
right?
I want them to be them. That's what I want them to be. That's what education, I mean, one of the educare from Latin means to draw from. That's one of the meanings that education comes from. So it's to draw from, not to stuff into. It's like, you know, how can you be the best? I teach, God knows how many people I've helped to teach Aikido over the years, but they're all different and they express it differently. We don't all move the same because we're not the same. And that's what you know, I don't know the next people that I train. I don't know what they're going to go and do. It surprises me what the people that have been through training so far go on and do, because sometimes I'm like, how did you do that? Because I want to know.
Done
something that I've never done. I'm like, oh, I never said you could do that. Go on, how did you do that? And that's the beauty of it. We all learn from each other, you know. Beautiful. Matt, It's been absolutely wonderful talking with you today, and thank you for sharing so much of your wisdom and experience, not just with me but with everyone else. And it's a wonderful example of how two people that, you know, when I first met you, I knew that there was a connection, and I knew that you had a lot to say, and I look forward to having a lot more to say with you in the future as well, that we plan to have.
The future that we plan to have, the future present moments, right?
The future present moment. But for the moment, thanks very much for taking some time out of your day and sharing some of yourself with me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Mark, and all the best.
Yeah, same to you.